Welcome to Losing Faith, Finding Spirit. Today, I want to talk about what about the good times? Maybe you've heard this, maybe you've thought this yourself in your abusive, narcissistic, toxic relationships. Maybe even if you have suffer from complex trauma in your childhood and even with your parents, you might have heard this said by your parents, or you might have thought this yourself, reflecting on your traumatic childhood. What about the good times? Surely it wasn't all bad. No, genuinely, it's not all bad. In fact, it is those good times that some of us cling to with all of our soul and all of our hope and all of our desire, thinking that maybe it'll get better because of the good times. In talking about narcissistic abuse, the good times can be sometimes referred to as breadcrumbing or breadcrumbs. And in the trauma bonding relationship, this is also called breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are basically these tiny little specks of good times. Think of the Hansel and Gretel story. They left a bunch of trail of breadcrumbs. And just like in our own lives, in our abusive relationships, you wake up the morning and all the breadcrumbs have been eaten by the ravens and the birds. And there's nothing there to show you the way back. That's pretty much it. You wake up one day and realize all of the breadcrumbs were a lie. All of the good times, there's air quotes that you cannot see, good times were just little. And you have to ask yourself, I'm going to ask you this. I want you to really dig deep, really think back about those good times. Were they really that good? Were they really that good? Or were they just surrounded by such horribleness that they shone brighter? Was everything so bleak that the petty little good thing shone? Using an example of my own life, which is what this whole channel is about. There was a time where I had had my breakdown. My ex-husband had done something that basically was a betrayal of my trust. And our relationship, our marriage, nothing could come back from it. It was basically the beginning of the end for me. And at that time, I was trying desperately to make things work because I still had that value of what a good wife in my mind was. And I had not realized at that time that I was dealing with a narcissistic and emotionally abusive relationship. I still had very much the self-blame and I was holding all the emotional responsibility for the marriage at that time. So I had this great idea to write down 3 things every day that my husband is good. Like 3 good things about my husband. Okay, let me tell you guys, let me tell you listeners. If you have to come up with 3 reasons that you love your spouse or your partner, or if you have to come up with 3 good things about your partner, and I only said 3. If you have to do that, it's probably not good. Your relationship is probably really bad. And I can tell you that some of the things that I said, one of the things that I said repeatedly was, he brings home coffee. He brings home tea. He brings home snacks. He brings home dinner. Like on his way home from work, it's not out of his way. It's on his way home. He's getting something good out of it. He brings it with him. And yeah, that was like the only thing I could come up with some days was, well, he brought home dinner today. That's a nice thing. I can bring home dinner. I can order dinner. That's something I can do. That's not something like above and beyond. That's not like a big thing. But because things were so horrible, that one little tiny act of kindness seemed big and massive. That's what I'm talking about. That's when we talk about breadcrumbs. When I ask you, is it really good? When I look back and I read those, because I still have that journal, and I stopped. I couldn't. At one point, I couldn't come up with 3 things. And I was like, this isn't working. This is actually making me more depressed and making me feel like this relationship is hopeless. And it was. And honestly, maybe that's a good exercise for you. Like if you're doing pros and cons, goods versus bads, maybe you should be writing it down, because when you look back on it, you can see that the good isn't really that good. Like I was trying really hard to write down things that were good about my day, things that were like positive. But what I was doing was trying to have almost the toxic positivity and overlook the abuse. And once I stopped doing that and started doing the radical acceptance and writing things down as they happened, what was real, what I felt, what was happening, when I started literally recording the times when he would monologue and rage at me and cuss me out and be emotionally abusive, and I was just being calm and trying to be like, hey, now's not a good time for me to get into this. I don't want to say things that, out of anger. I don't want to talk to you and disrespect you. And right now you're getting a little too strong, and I can't handle this right now. I need a timeout. I need to calm myself down so that we can discuss this like adults. And no, that was never good enough. It was you're too immature to talk about this. Like that shows you're a child because you can't handle the emotions. I'm like, I'm literally telling you my boundaries and you are violating them and disregarding them. It was very abusive. That's just put it out there. Now that I know, I know that was abusive. If your boundaries are violated, you need to get out. You don't need to stay, because it's just going to get worse. It will just get worse. It's not worth it. Is it really that good? Is it really that good? Chances are it's really not that good. It's just a little breadcrumb that keeps you hoping that it'll get better. It won't get better. It does not get better. It gets worse. You deserve better. You need to treat yourself better and start thinking about what your boundaries are so that you can live a happier, more peaceful life. And I wish that for you. So that's all. What about the good times? The good times were real. They really did happen. There were moments of happiness and joy in my childhood and in my marriage. I really did love and care for this person. I really do love and care for my parents. I don't wish horrible things on anybody. I just wish they would leave me alone. Like, stop treating me horribly. That would be great. Like, just go move on with your life. Like, take it somewhere else. Take all that trauma and drama and move it over there. Don't need it over here. This is my fence. Do not enter it with all of that. I don't need your yuckiness inside of here. The good times were real. You really did feel good in those moments. Don't let yourself write that person off as a good person just because of a few good things. When you are alone in the darkness, the tiniest bit of light can seem very dim, but the longer you stay in darkness, the brighter that light becomes and the more you can see things. Is the darkness so bad and so dark that tiny sliver of hope and that tiny goodness makes you feel like it's so much brighter than it is? And you're clinging to this tiny little bit of light. Or is it really good? If it's really good, you wouldn't even be asking this question. When it's good, you know it's good. When it's good, you don't have to look for the goodness. If you're having to look for the breadcrumbs, if you're having to look for those good things, if you are holding on to one moment in time, it's not good. That should be the norm. The good things should be so often that you almost take it for granted. And the bad things should be so rare that you're like, wow, we had a bad day. Not, remember that one good time that we had, back a couple years ago on our anniversary? That one anniversary several years ago? Or that time that we went out to that one concert together, years back? No. You should be like, remember that one bad time years back? Oh my goodness, I'm so glad we got through that. We are so good together. Y'all, if you are looking for the good, it's already bad enough. I just want that to be known. If you're asking yourself, what about the good times? You are in a bad situation. Maybe that's a red flag. And if you need to hear that, And I am going to say and validate that the good times probably were good. But again, you need to ask yourself, were they really good? Or was everything else just so bad that that one little good thing felt really good? And that's trauma bonding, we've talked about before. You keep going back into the cycle because every now and then there's something good, and you keep coming back to it and holding on to that. It's time to let go of the good things. Don't let anybody hold that against you. Don't let your parents, don't let your relationships, don't let anyone hold the good times against you. You don't owe somebody forgiveness just because of a few good times. You don't owe somebody a million chances because of a few good times. You don't owe anyone except for yourself. You owe yourself to have a good life, to have a peaceful life, and to live the best you can into your full potential. And you're not going to do that if you stay in these kinds of relationships. So I wish you the best. I hope you find your peace. I hope you find your path out of these relationships, or at least to a path of more peaceful living while you try to figure things out. And I wish you the best. Thanks for listening. Bye.